Okay, I'm going to take a vacation from trying not to jump out of a burning building, or I mean, out of my window, from watching Magical Lyrical Girl Nanoha, which is making me, you know that pistol like right over there that's invisible and you can't see it. Well, I'm considering picking it up like this invisible imaginary pistol, putting it to the side of my brain and going pew, because Magical Lyrical Girl Nanoha so far really, really sucks. I'll just tell you guys that I'll reserve judgment. I will reserve judgment. All right, so today I decided, well, why not talk about animes that had made me cry? Everybody has something emotional deep down inside that affected them, a particular show, particular movie, or sort of things like that. So I decided, well, today I'm going to look into animes that made me cry. And then the next blog, I'm going to talk about just things that made me cry in general, more than one. And so I'm kind of looking over these, and some of them are very, very embarrassing since they really aren't series that I would really consider to be tearjerkers. Only one of them I would, actually. And the rest of them are kind of just there. I didn't cry during Grave of the Fireflies for some reason, which is the obvious tearjerker anime. I'll give this one an honorable mention for like a minute here, just for the sake of it. Grave of the Fireflies is a Japanese anime film it isn't done by Studio Ghibli, I don't think, but it was produced by Hayao Miyazaki, I believe. Not directed, but produced. Don't quote me on this. I don't believe it's Ghibli. I'm not sure. Let me look up. Maybe I should do research before I start talking. But the point is, look up Grave of the Fireflies. It's a fantastic anime film. Here's the whole thing about Grave of the Fireflies. It's set during World War II. During World War II, when America was basically coming over and bombing the crap out of Japan after Pearl Harbor. And it's telling it from the perspective of these two kids. It's very sad, very depressing stuff. It really helps to sort of give you a different viewpoint of World War II. If you like war films, you'll definitely love Grave of the Fireflies. Emotional war films, something like Schindler's List is what this kind of reminds me of. It gives you a different perspective on a lot of things, but it's very sick, very sad, very emotional story. Trust me, it's one of the most mature anime I've ever seen. And I'm talking about maturity as in emotional maturity, not as in let's see how many gore shots or how many panty shots we can throw into a single anime. Which is funny. You really think about the definition of mature to some people. When you say mature to somebody, oftentimes it makes them think of pornography or something that's triple X. But no, Grave of the Fireflies is mature as in it's adult and not in the pornographic sense. Not at all. Anyways, let's get on to the list. F, A Tale of Memories. This is one tearjerker here. I'll tell you what, I had such emotional attachment to this series when I was watching it, mostly because I was involved in a relationship at the point that I was watching it. So when a lot of the events that were happening on screen really hit home with me, they really reflected a lot of my fears of where it could possibly go, what could happen, all of the risks that I was really taking with this particular relationship. And it was reflected on screen pretty much all the time. Everything that constantly went through my mind of all the scenarios that could possibly go wrong were going wrong in this particular show for these characters. And so it was an emotional roller coaster. And by the end of it, I wasn't crying because of something sad that happened. I was crying when it was finally all over. When the series was over and I broke down in tears. There was no other. I had never had that sort of experience with an anime, not in the longest of years, not since the very first anime I had watched, Full Metal Alchemist. I had never had that sort of emotional attachment with the show before, and let me tell you that it was something else entirely. It was that interpersonal connection, and I watched it right at the right time. If I had watched the show any other time, it wouldn't have connected with me the same way that it had. But since I was in that sort of circumstance while I was watching the show, I really rooted for the characters, and I was hoping everything was going to turn out all right. And every time something turned out horribly, every time something turned out bad for them, it ate me up on the inside. I was shouting at the screen during moments of this show. While I was in my room watching it, I was like, no, you can't do that. You can't freaking do that. Why, show? Why? But check out F A Tale of Memories, honestly. Full Metal Alchemist. I attribute this one mostly to the fact that this was my first time really watching an anime. And it was the only anime that I liked at this point. I had tried a couple other shows that I really disliked. And I was beginning to think that, maybe anime just wasn't for me. But FMA was my first real anime. And I sat down to watch this. And right from the word go, I loved the character of Edward Elric. I saw a lot of myself in Edward Elric and his philosophies, and just generally his viewpoints of the world, in his work ethic. I saw myself in Edward Elric. He was an every guy kind of hero. He was an every teen. Basically, he wasn't this perfect, prim, proper kind of guy. He had issues and he had concerns, and some of his viewpoints aren't always politically correct, which I admired a whole hell of a lot when I was watching the show. Ed Elric and his journey with his brother was ultimately what brought me down to tears by the conclusion of the show. I'm not going to say the event that happens that caused the tears to flow, but by the end of the series, it's such an untraditional conclusion, and yet it's so heartwarming to me that I just found myself tearing up all over the place. And just thinking about it it really does just get me going again. But it was, wow. You can't really think of an experience like that. Or at least I can't. It doesn't happen all the time where you just sit there and you're completely floored by a relationship between two cartoon characters. Eureka 7. Within the context of Eureka 7, I think most of the reason why I was so emotionally absorbed was that I watched the last 10 episodes all in a row. Just watched all of them right in a row. Within the context of Eureka 7, the whole thing that got me going was the relationship between Renton and Eureka. And the fact that, in the end, it's all of these differences between the two of them. Not just their positive aspects between them, like what makes them similar and unique and what draws them to each other. It wasn't just that, it was their commitment to each other. And by the end of this series, they are like a married couple. And it was very encouraging to me, since I'm kind of a diehard romantic. I'm a geek, but I'm a real big romantic at heart. And so I was watching this relationship unfold, and it's great to know that a series will actually move on from the point of, okay, here's how it usually goes. You have the relationship, the beginnings of a relationship, and then you have the conclusion of a relationship, and that's where things end off. But within the case of Eureka 7, it moves beyond just the beginnings of the relationship and them hooking up. It goes way beyond that. It goes into the complications. It goes into everything. Everything that actually makes a relationship that isn't actually usually detailed in television shows and movies and literature in general. It almost always concludes with, okay, here we go. This couple has gotten together. The end. No, in Eureka 7, they get together in like the middle of the series. Like I think it was like episode 24 or episode 25. And then their relationship becomes more and more complex as it goes along. That to me was incredibly moving, particularly at the end of the series when, again, I can't say, but my God, it was absolutely beautiful. It touched me. It, honest to God, touched me. I love when I see something about two people sharing love, sharing a relationship, and having it portrayed so beautifully on screen that, in the case of Eureka 7, that's why I fell in love with that anime. That's why I was willing to fly with it. An honorable mention before the time goes over 10 minutes is Howl's Moving Castle, but I really don't have time to go into that one. But it's basically the same reason as Eureka 7, so I really don't have to go into details about that. Tee-hee! Didn't you love how repetitious this was? This is Gotta Love Breath, and I am signing out. I'm going to go cry now.